President Obama still has more than 5 months left in office, but he's already looking ahead to the future, especially for his daughters, Malia and Sasha. The president wrote an essay for the September issue of Glamour magazine titled, "This is what a feminist looks like." And first on CBS This Morning, we're getting a preview. He writes, quote, "It's important for them to see role models out in the world. And yes, it's important that their dad is a feminist because now that's what they expect of all men." Cindi Leive is editor-in-chief of Glamour. Cindi, good morning.
Good morning.
So is this the first time we've heard the president really identify himself as a feminist?
Well, he did it. The first time I heard it was at a speech he gave in June at the United States of Women Summit that the White House held. And it did strike me as this very modern moment, something that we wouldn't have heard probably from any other president, but honestly, we would not have heard before this year, because I do think the embrace of the term feminism by men as well as women has really been on the rise.
I'd like to know who edits the president when he submits it. Did you say, you know what, this is good, but I think you need to change this?
Yeah, we're going to have to sit down and talk about paragraph 3.
So then did you reach out to him and say, will you do something?
So we started a conversation and said, you know, would you explore this in a bigger way and really talk about why you think it's important for men as well as women to embrace the term and also the idea, the principles of feminism.
I love this part that he said, we need to keep changing the attitude that values being confident, competitive, and ambitious in the workplace. Unless you're a woman, then you're being too bossy, and suddenly the very qualities you thought were necessary for success end up holding you back.
Yeah, you know what was interesting is that he really brought to this piece a lot of the very nuanced observations that women have about how we live our lives and the issues that we face in the workplace, like the bit that you just read. I mean, this goes beyond the kind of boilerplate, I believe in strong women, that at this point anybody can mouth pretty effectively.
I was interested in that. You know, the Washington Post Kaiser Family Foundation, 43% still think the word angry describes feminism.
It's true. I mean, I will note that in that same study, I believe 70% said that they thought feminism was empowering. So the angry view is in the minority. But I do think, you know, that was a very long-held belief about feminism, that if you called yourself that, then you were anti-men, you were anti-family, you were a quote-unquote feminazi. You know, there was this idea that if you believed in equality between the sexes, that you were somehow against men.
What is feminism more than the empowerment and the equality of women?
I think it's really about equality. I think it is as simple as that. It's not a complicated philosophy. I mean, of course, it's probably different for everybody, but that's how I would define it.
It is striking, too, that I think it's almost like our last 4 presidents all have daughters, if not more. I have just going off the top of my head, have all had daughters, and it has shaped their thinking, and Obama speaks about that in this essay, right?
Absolutely. I mean, he says, first of all, that it's important that he is very open about these issues, because then that's what they're going to expect of all men. But he talks about how he has seen his daughters run into obstacles, you know, people judging them for how they look, for how they behave. He's also clearly paid attention to what the young women in his office go through, and that idea that it's harder for a woman to negotiate for herself on the job sometimes because she'll be seen as calculating, where a man doesn't necessarily run into those double standards.
No,
he's paying attention.
He talks about the most important people in his life have been women, his mom and his grandmother. And you, in Glamour magazine, you've been talking a lot about politics. I want to switch to Hillary Clinton and about likability, because don't you find it interesting that that's still an issue for her today?
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is the one week when she actually doesn't have to worry about that, because she's running against somebody who is telling crying babies to leave the room. So maybe her likability is not really the issue right now. But it is interesting, Gail, if you look at studies, they show that people demand more likability of their female candidates than their male. That they don't necessarily.
It doesn't matter if you like the male?
No, just despite all of that stuff that we used to hear about how George Bush was the guy everybody wanted to go have a beer with. And not to say it isn't important at all, but it's not as important in how people see male candidates. They can accept voting for somebody they think is competent, but not necessarily likable. They're tougher on women.
Ivanka Trump said at the Republican convention that her father would fight for equal pay for equal work and would focus on making quality child care accessible. You spoke with Chelsea Clinton. We were there at an event at the Democratic convention. She seemed to sort of say, well, Ivanka, I haven't seen that anywhere on our dad's website.
She said that she would ask the candidate, well, how are you going to do that? You know, I haven't heard you talk about specific policies, and those are certainly what I think voters want to hear from any candidate right now.
Cindi Leive, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great to see you, Cindi.